Welcome to Balkans Debrief, a podcast about the Western Balkans. I am Ilva Tare, a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Europe Center. Today, we're talking about Montenegro's new government, which was finally formed after 4.5 months of negotiations. My guest is Ana Nenezic, political analyst and the director of the Institute for SocioPolitical Research, Analitico.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Montenegro's new government is led by Prime Minister Milojko Spajic, who has pledged to follow the country's pro-European path, as President Milatovic has also stated. However, this new government also includes Andrea Mandic, as it is described in the local media, and not only Serb and the pro-Moscow Serb nationalist hardliner. Now he is the Speaker of Parliament. And this has raised some concerns among the Western partners and the opposition parties in Montenegro, a NATO member country. Anna, how do you think the new government will be able to reconcile the presence of a pro Russian figure in the government with its EU goals?
Well, it will be a challenge. That's for sure because we didn't have similar experiences in past. But finally, at least after 4 months of not working, we have a functional parliament and we have a government in full capacity after almost 1.5 years of having just a technical government put in place. As for the new government, I would say that the composition of a new government reflects a complex political landscape, which is marked by a coalition of diverse political entities, each bringing a distinct set of ideologies to the table. As you already said, the Europe Now is the leading party. They got 24 out of 81 seats in the parliament, and Milojko Spajic was the one who was leading the negotiation process. I must say that the results were surprising to the most of the citizens because during these 4 months, he was trying to form, as he was saying, the pro-EU and pro-NATO government. But at the end of the process, he decided to make a switch, which was sudden and it was surprising, as I said, to most of the citizens here. And he decided to form a government with pro-Russia and pro-Serbia party called For the Future of Montenegro.
Which
They
he
are
was
not.
against initially. Do we know what made his mind change?
Well, I believe that he was pushed to this solution as he didn't have any other choices. He was trying to form a government in a previous period with different political actors. He was left with maybe a month more of the time for him to solve this puzzle. And at the same time, he was having a turmoil inside of the party. So at the end, this was the only viable option for the government to be formed. And the other option was for us to go to the other election process, which would not be a great solution for this country.
So, if I am understanding it well, was this a coalition forced by numbers or it's a union of principles too?
If we consider that Prime Minister now, Spajic, said at the beginning of negotiation that for him, every political party is acceptable except the DPS and DF, then we need to consider this as somebody which was not the first option for him. He did try to form the centristic government in a way to have the parties which are gathered around the political center to form this new government. He was negotiating with the Bosniak party, with the Democrats, with URA, but he didn't have enough a number of MPs which we need or he needs to be supported in the parliament. So at the end, and considering that for the future, for Montenegro was having a strong media campaign and he was pressuring him the whole time, that was only safe and secure option for him to form the government, I would say.
During those 21 hours long parliamentary debate for the new government before it was elected, I think President of European Commission Ursula von der Leyen was in Montenegro. I'm not sure if she followed the debate, but for sure she followed the new coalition of the government. Has she expressed any concerns about the presence of Mandic in the coalition?
No, I don't. I don't think that would be expected from the president of the European Commission. You know that members of the EU do not have the unified standing point about these internal divisions inside of the country. So what we got from the president of the European Commission was that she is expecting us to fulfill all the conditions that we need to in order to fasten the EU integration process. And these were the only messages that we constantly are receiving from the European Commission. And this was not different this time as well. But on the other hand, I was joking this morning. At least we can try to block the preconditions that Montenegrins are lazy, considering that she was in the country while the parliament was working the whole night in order for us to select the parliament, the chief of the parliament, and also the government.
Well, after a long night, day-night debate, some humor it is needed. But on the serious note, in this coalition, in this government, there are Albanian parties too. How will they coexist with the Serbian party, who has opposed in the past the independence of Kosovo, the independence of Montenegro as well? How do you think this coexistence will go?
It will be interesting to observe this, because this was also a surprise, at least for me. You know that Albanian parties are mostly trying to push and to advocate for a better position of Albanian minority in Montenegro, and in general they are pro EU and pro NATO. They're completely for the pro-Western strategic part of Montenegro. In comparison to them, the former DF coalition, it's not. By their own saying, they're the ones who are advocating for the regional cooperation, but they are somebody who do not support NATO, who do not support the decisions that we made, for example, recognizing Kosovo as independent state. And at the same time, they're also showing the Euroscepticism towards the EU part of the country. But they did sign the agreement with the Europe Now Democrats Albanian parties. And in this agreement, it stated that they should follow this EU and NATO part. So Albanian parties are taking this as if the former DF parties officially recognized the Kosovo as an independent state, because in the agreement it is put down as a sentence that they will recognize every country with whom Montenegro has relations, and previously recognized that country as a separate and sovereign country, of course.
So, apart from the signing of today's government, is there expectation from Mr. Mandic's party and himself, since he is going to be the Speaker of Parliament? Does he have political power to divert local EU reforms or foreign policy, or go back to his past where he didn't want the independence of Montenegro or recognition of Kosovo?
He has a power as a president of the parliament. He is also a member of the Montenegrin Council for Security as well. At the same time, the members are president and prime minister. So these are the people who will decide whether Montenegro will deploy, for example, the military in some cases, or they will make any decision concerning the security in this country. Besides that, he will be able to receive every top secret document that Montenegro is receiving as a full member NATO state, which is a reason for concern. And in previous days and months, we were able to hear precisely the standing point of the US, at least US embassy in Montenegro, who they clearly set the boundaries, and they said these are not this is not a party we can be partners with just because of their political stances. At the same time, as a president of the parliament, and somebody who is a really strong actor in this coalition, he will be able to Spajic will not be able to move forward with any decision if there is no agreement between every party which is a member of this coalition. This is also part of the agreement, and we were trying to explain that this is not a democratic mechanism, because it's at the same time it annul the dialogue between the political parties. To be precise, they put in the agreement that they will not push any law for example, any initiatives to the parliament before they do not have the agreement between the leaders of the political parties combining this new ruling majority. And this is concerning, because maybe there is some initiatives which can be looked positively and supported by the opposition parties in the parliament. And they will not be able to do so if there is no yes coming from Andrija Mandic, for example.
Do you believe this is going to be a stable government?
I do not think so. I'm sure this is just my opinion as somebody who is a political analyst. I truly believe that it will be surprising for them to last longer than 6 months because there is a strong differences in ideologies of these political parties. There is 11 political parties in this coalition, 6 coalitions in this majority. So it's really hard to find a way how to combine these differences and to form a stable government. I'm sure they will try, but when you open a really sensitive issues, I'm sure you will face challenges you will not be able to overcome. So for me, I would say that we will have the stable government, but in not this composition. I believe we'll have the changes inside of the government with different parties, maybe after 6 months or a year, and then things will change because I do not see this as a functional combination.
Before I ask you about the challenges of the government, and especially since they have promised that it's going to be a pro-EU government, what's going to happen? What's the political future of the former Prime Minister Abazovic? What has he said after the new government was elected?
So his party secured 4 seats in the parliament, so he will be an MP. He was speaking last night for the first time as a former prime minister, and we had a really interesting debate between Mr. Abazovic as a former prime minister with Milojko Spajic as a future prime minister at that time. They were debating some of the part of the programs that Milojko Spajic was proposing, because Abazovic was saying that what he's planning to do, at least in economical sense, will not be possible to do in Montenegro. Also, he was really critical towards the coalition that it was formed, because he believes, based on what he said last night, that this will not function in reality,
Practical, yeah.
especially because of the senses of the future of Montenegro.
And when I mentioned some of the challenges, I guess the government has to deal with combating corruption, money laundering. How will the new government proceed with completing the judicial reform, which is one of the conditions to continue with the negotiations with the EU?
Well, rhetorically, they propose several solutions how to finally resolve these issues around the chapters 23, 24, judiciary and fundamental rights, because you know that we cannot move forward on the EU part if we do not find a way how to resolve this. Some of the key issues is appointment of the key judicial figures that we need to finally solve. And in order to do that, to be able to do that, we need 2/3 of majority in the parliament. And we have it now. So Spajic will have the votes necessary to select, for example, the president of the Supreme Court, state prosecutor, and all the other positions that we were unable to fulfill in the last several years. And this was the main issue why we couldn't move forward in the EU part. It was not possible to organize a political dialogue between these parties. So at least we know that they will have the numbers to select these people. But I hope that they will not use this to push certain solutions on the society. They will use this power to organize a debate and for us to be able to choose somebody who will really, truly unblock the judiciary in traditional sense of the word.
So, Anna, I don't know if this was one of the arguments debated in the parliament, but why does a country that has 620,000 residents need 5 deputy prime ministers and 18 cabinet ministers? Is this a large cabinet government, or that's the practice? That's the normal size for government
This
in
is the
Montenegro?
highest number we had so far, but this extensive number of deputy prime minister and ministers is indeed an unbelievable phenomenon, especially when you consider the size of the country. But if you consider that we do not have the law on government in place, so there is no legal framework to dictate the structure of the government, this is used just to fulfill all the political appetites of every political party. That is involved in this majority. As I said previously, if you consider that we have 11 political parties, then you need to consider that every and each of these parties they were asking for a certain positions in order to support this government. So we ended up with 18 ministers and also with 5 prime ministers, which is unusual. I think that this is some kind of a record if you see it in comparison to the other countries. But
Yeah,
also,
I
as
think
I said,
definitely it shows
yeah,
how difficult the negotiation was, uh,
yes,
and in
yes.
the end, the rewarding for the coalition. Um, how much debate is in the country or concern about the role of Serbia now that Serbian party is part of the governing coalition and Mandic is a speaker of parliament?
I can say that this is really an issue that it is debated in Montenegro because the foreign influence, the regional influence, I would say, we had it for years, but it's really obvious the last 3 years after we had the fall of the government of Djukanovic in 2020, when the opposition parties, with support of the Serbian Orthodox Church, finally managed to find a formula how to beat DPS after 30 years of ruling. So they did use everything possible to form this government. And they said as somebody who was involved in this process, that they chose that government inside of one of the monasteries with the support of Serbian Orthodox Church. So, unfortunately, in Montenegro, as a democratic state, as a secular state, we have now one of the churches, I would say, or religious communities being also involved in political processes, which is not something you can see in a secular state. But this is the fact, and also you had European Parliament 3 years in a row trying to warn us that we need to face with this, because they are seeing the Serbian Orthodox Church just as a tool being used by Serbia and Russia to influence the political processes in the country. So we can see this development, even this government and majority being formed, also as a result of this well structured, well organized strategy, not coming from inside of the country, but outside of the country.
The pro EU new government of Spajic has to deal with many issues, financial for sure, influences Serbia, Russia, China, but
Yeah.
especially China and the highway investment and the loan that the government has with them. Is there any public information how the new prime minister will deal with China's influence in the country?
He was not mentioning anything concerning any other foreign forces that we have present here in Montenegro, just US and Europe, trying to confirm our commitment to be a committed partner to the Western structures. But at the same time, we need to understand that China is present in Montenegro primarily through a substantial state loans and investment that they gave to this country. They gave us the credits to build the first highway in Montenegro. And that is also seen as a form of influence, which is not being exercised just in Montenegro, but it is being exercised here as well. They continued investing in the country, building other highways. But critics have pointed out the potential risk of this China debt trap diplomacy, where countries may find themselves in a position of financial vulnerability and potentially giving China influence over their domestic and foreign policies. I'm just hoping that we will not see something like this, but it is completely uncertain because we are facing and we are dealing with the politicians which are not that well known to the wider public. This is their first high position, so we will need to observe and to see how things will develop in future.
Well, at least ambitions set by Prime Minister Spajic are pretty high. He said that he envisions Montenegro as the Switzerland of the Balkans or Singapore of Europe. How was this received by the public?
I would say with irony, just because it's not the first time. If you see the other prime ministers, for example, from DPS, they were trying to compare Montenegro to develop it to be a new Monaco. Then you had Krivokapic who was saying that he will try to develop Montenegro in order to be same as Luxembourg. So now we have these two states. So this is something we are completely used to. And I believe that citizens of Montenegro really need realistic promises, not this megalomany of promises that you cannot deliver. It would be amazing if you can push us towards these countries to be how I would say this, to be economically developed like Singapore, for example. But I do not think that's a possibility, at least not in next 10 years, maybe in future, but for now, for sure, that is not a possibility. And for me, it was really interesting to observe that he used two non-EU states to compare us with. Even though there is, I will not speculate with anything. It was just interesting to observe that among every EU nation that which are really pretty economically well developed, you use two examples which are not EU member states.
Anna, thank you very much for analyzing with us the new coalition government in Montenegro. Good luck with the new government, and hopefully we will see more acceleration of the EU negotiations of Montenegro with the European Union. And of course, we will also discuss and debate about this here at Balkans Debrief. And thank you to our audience for joining us for this episode of Balkans Debrief. Please subscribe and share our episodes with your friends, with your followers. We will be back soon with another episode about the Western Balkans.